everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for our Cultivating Mindful Habits webinar. My goal for you today is really to give you some actionable strategies to help you cultivate mindful habits for yourself so that you might be able to teach them to your staff and students. So we have 5 mindful habits that we'll be going over today: being present, being calm, being compassionate, being grateful, and reflecting. And this webinar was adapted out of one that I do teach to parents, so there will be some associated handouts that I'll mention throughout that are more geared towards parents but easily adaptable to teachers. And I just wanted to let you know that I developed this program out of my thesis project at Teachers College, Columbia, where I worked really closely with some really great professors like neuroscientist and physician Dr. Kim Noble, who will be giving a webinar for us later on this year on the neuroscience of adversity, and Dr. Jeannie Brooks-Gunn, who is a great developmental psychologist. They really helped me refine all of these concepts so that I can teach parents and teachers how to be more in the moment so that they can be intentional with their time and grow deeper relationships with their children and students. Next slide, please. So why is it important to cultivate mindfulness? I'm sure you all have seen at your schools some of the effects of trauma on your students. There are effects on the brain that then result in behavioral changes that often cause disruptions in the classroom. And we have a lot of research that shows that mindfulness directly relates to these effects. So in their work on attachment theory, self-regulation, and mindfulness, there are researchers at the University of California, Davis, who studied a longitudinal meditation program, and they found the list of benefits on the right there in many of the participants. And they also found that these participants consistently held more secure attachments as well. So all of these benefits can be seen in yourself after you practice mindfulness consistently. Next slide, please.
Go back one slide.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So with today's webinar, we're introducing our insights in the elaboration process. As we conduct webinars, we will periodically have an opportunity for me to dialogue with the presenter and just to kind of review some key facts or key understandings that the presenter has presented to you, and to perhaps ask questions and dialogue. So the first one really, Dana, has to do with habits, okay? And I'm thinking that, you know, here we are talking about mindful habits, and as you think about teachers, why is it so important for teachers to be mindful of their habits and the impacts on students?
Yeah, teachers really need to be cognizant of how their behavior is being viewed by their students, because children look up to adults as models for how to operate in the world, especially when it comes to social and emotional skills. So as teachers, everything you're doing is influencing what the students in your classroom see as normal behavior. So it's really important to act mindfully, and that will teach your students to cultivate those habits as well.
Now, what I want to do is I want to talk for a minute about the research on mindfulness. And some of what I'm referring to will come from the book that I wrote with Michelle Rivers Murphy and Yvette Jackson. It's called Mindfulness Practices, and it's the one that we have given to the fellows in New England. And in that book, there are segments that talk about the neurobiology of trauma, the impact on the brain and on child development, and how trauma can really interfere. So it makes it very difficult for children to be in this mode where they're ready to learn and where they're ready to pay attention academically. And if we think of mental health issues and concerns, and children with the most challenging behaviors and challenging emotions, for these children in particular, it may be hard to focus because they've always gotten kind of this echo in the back of their brain that will say, watch out, alert, you know, this could be a threat. And what we want to try to do is calm that down. That's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today with mindfulness. So if you'll show the next slide, I just have one specific bit of data I want to share with you. This comes from a project at in California, and it's with mindfulness schools. And what they did is over a period of 6 weeks, they introduced a mindfulness program with breath work and meditation and some yoga movements. And it was only 15 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week. And you can see these tremendous gains in paying attention, calming, self-care, and showing care for others. And that is only within 6 weeks of pretty consistent practices. Again, there's a lot of research out there. We will get to a little more later on in the presentation today, and we'll also have some other resources available to you. Okay, so Dana, back to you.
Great, thank you. So before we talk about each habit, let's all get on the same page about what a habit exactly is, because habits are not integrated into your life immediately. They are only put there by practicing them consistently. Behaviors only become habits when you do them repeatedly. So the first step of cultivating these habits for your school is making sure that you're weaving them into the fabric of your own life and your school day. And a team at the University London College found that it takes on average 66 days for something to become a habit. So I'm going to challenge you today to choose one of those 5 habits to practice consistently for the next 2 months and see if you find that it's made a difference in your life. Slide. So the first habit is to be present. So what does being present mean? I'm actually going to open this one up in the chat box, or if you want to get your microphone unmuted, you can raise your hand. Who wants to chime in and give me their idea of what it means to be present? Kind of an esoteric word. We don't really have a grasp on it sometimes. It's mindfulness lingo. So I'll go ahead and give you my definition while we're getting some other ideas in. Oh, I see someone says it means actively listening. That's great. We'll be talking more about that in just a moment. So I think that it means being conscious of the moment in the here and now. And you do that by using all of your senses to be in the present moment, to be aware of your body, your emotions, and your thoughts. And you extend that awareness outside yourself to others and the environment that surrounds you. This also means not dwelling in the past or letting your mind wander into the future. So if we really break these words down, we can see that they do have concrete meaning. Next slide. So how can you cultivate these habits for yourself and your students and your staff? So the first thing, if you can examine your calendar and make sure that you're being intentional with both your time and your energy. What things are filling your calendar that don't necessarily need to be there? For example, does every single issue require a meeting, or can some things be delegated or handled via email? Make sure that the time that you're spending outside of your work is really quality time so that you're feeling refreshed and rejuvenated when you come back to work the next day. Another way to be present is to make sure that you're putting away technology. So the average American spends more than 5 hours a day on their phone. And if you're engaged with your phone, you're not going to be fully engaged with the work that you're doing or the people that you're around. So students pick up on this very quickly. I've seen lots of teachers think that when students are doing independent work, this is a great opportunity to check texts. But if you're doing that, that means that you're missing the student who's sitting there confused, or you're missing the students chatting in the back who could be looking for your help. So put your phone away when you're teaching or in a meeting. If you're in a meeting and you're texting, you're not gaining any of that valuable information your colleagues have to share with you. This applies to all screens, iPads, computers, even TV at home sometimes can distract us when we should be focusing on grading a student's paper. The act of having your phone out when you should be focused on someone or something is called technoference. And research shows that as it increases, so do child behavior problems, including whining, sulking, temper tantrums, and restlessness. So it's especially important that teachers put their phone away when they know they have students who are prone to get distracted. So I'm going to challenge you to put your phone away each day this work week. The last idea for cultivating being present is practicing active listening. Next slide. So there are 3 steps to active listening, but it's a very simple process, yet it takes a lot of practice to start to do automatically. And it's really important that you explicitly teach it to students by modeling it and then giving them a chance to practice. So the first step is to use eye contact. We have mirror neurons in our brain that when we're actually looking at each other, we can better understand the emotions that each person is conveying. So the first step is to look into your conversation partner's eyes. The second step is definitely the hardest because it's our instinct to try to think of what to say next when the person is talking, but really resist that urge and actually listen to the words that are coming out of your conversation partner's mouth. And while you're doing that, make sure that you leave all of your judgment behind. Don't think about how what they are saying makes you feel, but instead try to figure out how they feel by the words that they're saying to you. These do seem very simple, and they are, but they're going to take a lot of practice. So I'm going to challenge you to try this out with a spouse or a family member sometime today or tomorrow and see if it helps you understand what they're saying a little more easily. Lots of parents have told me that their conversations with their children are much richer when they practice active listening, and they learn more about their children's lives. And teachers can easily apply this in the classroom to form deeper relationships with their students and stop guessing how their students feel and actually understand it.
So Dana, I know that many people at this stage know something about being mindful. It's becoming something that's trending across the country. So I imagine so far they're thinking, okay, yes, mindfulness sounds good. But I'm curious about what happens in the classroom. Let's say we have a 7th grade teacher who's used to coming into the classroom, has a certain routine. There may be like 5 class preparations a day, right? So it's a lot to think about switching gears, preparation to preparation. And you have these students that are streaming in, right? And with that, the teacher may be focused on, okay, I need to get things ready. We need to get, people working, and what am I going to say and do, right? So if a teacher was mindful of the students, how would that shift? And what might be the difference then in what happens in the classroom?
Absolutely. So when a teacher is mindful, she's actually going to be thinking ahead. She or he will actually be thinking ahead and be intentional with how they're going to set the tone in the classroom and how they have their routine set up. So for example, a teacher might come in a little bit early so that they get the lighting just right, the temperature just right, maybe even have some essential oils that are calming for the students. And that's actually it might make teachers think like it's more work, it takes more time, but it's actually going to save you time because your students, when you are mindful, are going to start to show those same mindful habits, and you'll spend less time stopping your lesson to correct behaviors. Students also have a lot more focus when they practice mindfulness, and I'll delve more into that in a later section. But mindful teachers are going to be great examples of mindfulness, but only if they're genuinely embodying mindfulness themselves. So that's why it's so important for teachers to really take these habits to heart and pick one to focus on and start small. Start small. Don't try to change your whole teaching style and your whole life. Pick a few things to do, and then it'll be a snowball effect. You'll start to see the benefits in your life, and you'll want to do it more yourself.
You know, what I would say too, when I'm thinking about active listening is, so often with the disruptive student, what we really want to do is get that student quiet, right?
Yeah.
So we can go on with our lesson. And it seems like active listening is almost the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So what do? A student is definitely upset, right? And maybe angry, maybe just like doesn't want to deal with anything other than what's bothering the student. And the student comes marching into your classroom, and you're trying to be mindful and be an active listener, but yet you don't want all the attention focused on this student. So can you give us a hint about what a mindful teacher might do?
Sure. A mindful teacher might already have a routine set up where her students know exactly what they should be doing when they come into the classroom, so that that gives her a moment to look around the classroom and kind of visually check in and see where everybody's out at, and give the students a moment to settle and get engaged with whatever schoolwork they're engaged with as maybe a do now. That's a pretty common practice in education right now, a quick little activity that's independent. And at that point in time, the teacher can quietly go around and check in with any students she know might need a check-in, and leave space in her lessons to do those types of things, and always be present and reading the room.
Okay, and I'll just end by saying, it seems to me too that this active listening in the case like this may be something that occurs several times. It's not just because the student is upset right now and you feel like you need to understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
It may be that you handle it with a counselor, even perhaps, or an administrator, or at least at some other time, have a more private conversation with the student.
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Okay, so we have our first poll. I know that we haven't gone over all 5, but I want you to go ahead and think about which of the 5 habits your staff excel at. You just get to pick one, so pick the one you think your staff does the best at.
Has everyone voted? I'm going to launch these results, if that's okay with you. Okay.
Even. Okay, oh, interesting. Looks like being compassionate is the skill that most of the staff have. So being grateful is something maybe we might want to pay attention to. None of the staff are quite embodying that or being present. Those are hard ones. All right, well, stay tuned for tips on all 5 of those habits. So habit number 2. Habit number 2 is be calm. So being calm means being free of extreme emotions, having no conflicts on your mind, and feeling at peace. It's a state of mind, and even when you're surrounded by chaos, which often happens in the classroom, if your mind is calm, then your body will follow, because your heart rate and breathing slow down when you're calm. Your nervous system is very interconnected with your emotional system. So how can we cultivate these habits of being calm? I'm going to go into each of these in more depth. The first one is to be your student's emotion coach. The next is to use breath work in stressful situations. And the last is to make meditation a daily practice. So the first one is emotion coaching. Teaching children how to handle their own emotions and recognize the emotions of others during a conflict is one of the most beneficial skills you can give them. So this really comes into play when students are fighting with each other or doing disruptive behavior, something that's kind of breaking the rules.
Everyone's banging on my door.
Oh, Orenthia, can you mute yourself?
Sorry.
It's okay.
My son is banging on my door.
So there are 3 quick steps to emotion coaching. I shouldn't call them quick, but this all does happen in about a minute or a minute and a half, so it's not a very long process. So the first one is to get down on their level. Use eye contact. It's really intimidating when you're trying to have a conversation about something that someone just did wrong when you're looming over them. So for younger students, you really want to crouch down so you can see eye to eye. If it's a high school or middle school student, maybe get somewhere where you're both sitting comfortably eye to eye. The second one I'm going to talk about with caution, because when you have children who have experienced sexual or physical trauma, physical touch might not be appropriate. And even in the secondary grades, physical touch is rarely appropriate. So when you do know that a child has experienced trauma, only give physical contact if you know that child very well and you know that that's okay. And this can be like high fives, a little hand on the shoulder, or if it's a preschool teacher, often hugs are appropriate, but in public school, that's usually no longer the case. The next step is talk it through. So you want to make sure that you're validating their emotions, saying, oh, I understand why you're so angry. Then you reflect on their actions. But did screaming really solve your problem? And then you brainstorm solutions, which for younger kids or kids who are kind of don't want to talk about the problem, you might have to give them some solutions, but give them a chance to come up with some better solutions themselves. But if not, you just come out and give them one. Next time, instead of screaming, let's use quiet, calm words to express our frustration and never use our hands. And this tactic is going to help students better understand their emotions, identify their emotions, and also calm their emotions. However, they're not going to get it right the first time. So the next time they need some emotion coaching, just if you see that you might just be able to give a gentle reminder instead of going through the whole process, or go through the whole process again. And keep in mind that you're going to be in situations that require you to deviate or modify these steps. So make sure that you're really using your flexibility and judgment. I have a handout that's linked here that gives you those 3 steps. And I've had some really cute stories come from teachers that tell me that after doing this process with children, they see groups of kids in the dress-up corner emotion coaching for each other. Using visual aids is really nice for this. For younger students, you can use a visual aid to show them how to do this with their friends, and you'll definitely see them doing that on the playground and other places.
So Dana, I think these steps are really important ones. And I also understand that sometimes kids don't always cooperate the way we'd anticipate. So you have the 4 steps. And, the first one may be to recognize emotions or to talk about the emotions, right? And yeah. May not want to, right? It's angry, and you say something about, gee, it seems like you might have had some anger. And no, it marches off. What would you do?
Yeah, so in that case, I would always try not to insert my own idea of what the student feels from the beginning. I would ask them first. And if they didn't, I might guess what they're feeling, but I would really give them a little bit of time to reflect on it. And a lot of younger students need some options. So offering some options, and a teacher would be wise to, before they emotion coach students and explicitly teach them how to emotion coach, to have a class discussion about emotions and maybe write a poster where they write out all the different kinds of emotions they can feel, and really leave the identifying more in the student's hands. And if you can't identify the emotion, then you can just say, well, I know you felt sad or angry or frustrated, and they will probably identify that emotion for themselves later.
I think it's important to remember too that this is a learning process. So we have the steps, and it may take a while for the students to catch on.
Absolutely.
And for us to feel like, gee, we've made some real progress. So as a teacher, you still continue to go through the steps. And as you do this over a period of time, I think that more and more students will follow through and be able to respond to the prompts you give. Correct?
Absolutely. Definitely. Practice makes better.
And I guess the last thing I want to say is we focused quite a bit on young children, but you can think about teenagers and where they are with their emotions. They wear them on their sleeves a lot, right?
Yeah.
And you as a teacher may find that you're feeling very empathetic, that in fact a student has, maybe experienced some trauma or some abuse and comes to you with an issue. And you could do emotional coaching, but just a couple of reminders. One is, of course, to always keep that door open. And so you're not putting yourself in a situation where later people would come back and say, hey, what's going on? And the second is to be very respectful of boundaries, including physical boundaries with older students.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the last thing I would say with that too is that you may not be the right person to give the emotional coaching to an older student. You may find the counselor might be, or another teacher even, someone that the student has a better relationship with. So you have to kind of use some of your intuition to figure out, like, how do you help the student handle these emotions?
Absolutely. And that brings up a good point. You might not be the right person to coach them, and parents are often a good person to coach them, and it's a good skill to teach parents. So that handout is a great resource to give to parents, because if you're not translating those skills into the home, it's going to make your job a little more difficult. So now I would love to open the mics up for you all to ask any questions about emotional coaching, or for you to tell us your own experience of emotional coaching. You can also type something in the chat. I've had lots of parents tell me that once they started implementing this procedure, they didn't really have tantrums anymore. They started to be able to anticipate when things were going to happen with their kids and stop them kind of before they happened. Does anybody want to chime in?
I'll chime in. I have 4 children, as you can hear. They're 4, 6, 8, and 10. And my second child, we've done a lot of emotion coaching because he deals with a lot of anger. And so one thing that I've learned about children that have anger, deal with anger, you really have to be mindful and really teach them how to de-escalate. And one thing I've noticed is that when you teach, when you do emotional coaching, I think what I've learned is how to separate the child from the behavior, right? And I'm teaching him that, so he understands that I'm not a bad kid because I have a hard time. And he'll say, "Mommy, my brain is telling me to throw things and yell, but I don't want to, but I don't know how to tell my brain not to." And so giving him the strategies to calm down and work with his teachers. One thing I've learned is that with mindfulness, it helps children separate the behavior from who they are, so they don't attach negative behavior to identity. And so that's one thing I've learned. And I've got emotional coaching training from some of the counselors in our county, and it's been amazing. And it's helped a lot in our home with him because it was a slippery slope that we were going through.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, Aranthia. That's really great. And that brings up a great point, that these are skills that kids need to be taught. They're not just born with them. You're helping them navigate social situations with each other, which is a skill that needs to be taught. Okay, let's move on to the next slide in sake of time. And this one is also a handout that's linked there when you get the presentation. So for both children and adults, breath work and meditation reduces stress, increases happiness, and focus. And focusing on slow breathing changes the flow of oxygen to your brain, which leaves you better able to focus. It also lowers the heart rate. And this automatically has a calming effect on our emotions, since they're so tied up with the sympathetic nervous system. So breath work is really an in-the-moment crisis stress reduction strategy. And I'm going to teach you some kid-friendly breath work. The first one is really generic. It's the deep belly breathing. That's just where you teach children to breathe in through their nose with a closed mouth and fill their bellies up as big as possible, and then breathe out, hold it in for a little bit, and then breathe out through the mouth. And a father shared with me that for really young children, maybe your own children, not your students, if you put them on your lap and let them feel your belly filling up, that really helps concretize this practice for them. The second one is really similar to deep belly breath. The flower breath is the same motions. They just pretend like they're trying to blow all the seeds of a dandelion off the top of a flower. And then this third one is one that we're going to try all together. This one is really great for active kids who don't want to sit still and try any kind of breath work practices. So if you have anything in your hand, please put it down right now because we're going to do this all together. It's called, you can do it with Spider-Man or with Elsa, depending on which character your active student likes the best, but we're going to do Spider-Man today. So I'm going to tell you how it goes and then we'll practice it together. So the first step is you have kids put their hands out, palm up, and you tell them that you're going to charge up your webs by breathing in through their nose and clenching their fists as tight as possible. And then they're going to hold their breath and clench their fists even harder. And then they're going to release their hands to shoot out the webs while the breath comes out of their mouth. So let's try it all together. Okay, breathe in, clench your fist, charge up those webs. Okay, hold, charge, charge, charge. All right, shoot out the webs and shoot out your breath. Okay, let's try it again. Charge up those webs, charge them, charge them, charge them. Now shoot out those webs. Okay, and then if you'll do a little body scan, you might feel a touch calmer now. And for active kids, this one's a really fun one. And the adaptation for Elsa is just that you are shooting out icicles from your wrists instead of the webs. So please do check out that breathwork handout, and it has some great notes. So the next one is very good for older kids who don't want any of the fuss, and even for you. This is my favorite kind of secret breathwork activity because you can do this very easily in a staff meeting. No one even has to know that you're doing breathwork. Maybe something gets you riled up and you just need to take a little moment to calm down before you raise your hand to speak. Really simple. You just find a focal point in front of you, form your mouth up a little bit, breathe in through your nose, counting in your head, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then release it out of your mouth, 4, 3, 2, 1. Takes about 10 seconds. You can repeat it as much as you want though, until you feel calmer. And then, so that's for in the moment stress. Now meditation is also going to make you feel really calm after you've finished a session, but meditation is a really great practice to create more calm in general in your life, because when you meditate, you can feel those effects throughout your day. So you want to make it a daily routine to get the most out of it. So I've heard many teachers who like to start their class period off with a quick 3-minute meditation report that the students are more focused, less disruptive, and more calm than the days that don't begin with meditation. And there's actually a meta-study about meditation programs in schools that found that they're very effective at improving or reducing stress and anxiety and depression. But they're even more effective when the classroom teacher themselves is the one leading the meditation. So this to me points to the idea that meditation programs are great tools for building classroom community. So the rainbow body scan is my favorite. It's really fun. What you do is you have students close their eyes while they're seated in their seats, and you tell them to imagine a red light kind of glowing on top of their head, and they clench up all the muscles in their face really tight, and as they breathe in, and then they see the red going all the way down to their toes, and then as they let their breath out, they unclench, and then you move through the rainbow, doing orange at your shoulders, doing yellow at your belly, and just continuing that process down through the rainbow. The next one is a really great confidence builder, because if you do it as a classroom, you get to give each student a chance to be the leader. So what you do is you have one person be the leader, and they tell you where their happy place is, which place makes them calm, and then you do a guided meditation where you have everybody imagine that person leading them through a meadow or a beach and paying attention to all 5 senses. What will they see? What will they hear? And then connect that to their body. How does their body feel? And bring the breath in. And then there are various scripted guided meditations for basically any scenario you could think of. Just go on YouTube. They're free. And there's so many. Kid-friendly sleep meditation, kid-friendly anti-anxiety meditation. There's so many great ones. And also, again, on the handout. All right, so our third habit is to be compassionate. Compassion is showing kindness to others, acting in a caring way, and having a willingness to help others. So how do we cultivate compassion in our students? Next slide. The first step is to model it. Students are going to look up to you as an example. So whenever you're interacting with other educators, take a step back and think, am I being compassionate? And also verbalize how you're interacting with them. That's going to help concretize these ideas a little bit more. It's especially important to show compassion when you have a disagreement, or to use disagreements in your classroom as a teaching opportunity for compassion. Students are not always going to agree on the same thing, but you can ask them to step into each other's shoes and see things from a different perspective. Also, when someone is struggling in the community, could you come up with a classroom project to help the homeless or help a family whose house just burned down? Look for opportunities to model compassion together as a classroom community. A really great way to teach compassion is to read books about it. And that's a link to a list of mindful books that hit all of the habits that we're talking about today. But compassionate books are especially wonderful because this is kind of a more complex concept for young students. And when they read books, they can really relate to the characters in the books and feel like they can put themselves in those characters' shoes to better understand different ways of showing compassion. One of my favorite ones is the book, Have You Filled a Bucket Today by Carol McLeod, and it has an entire curriculum that surrounds it that really teaches kids how to show compassion. A lot of schools already integrated it into their socio-emotional learning curriculum, but you can also help parents reinforce it at home by giving them handouts. I did this with my kindergarten class, and it became a competition of kindness. They loved doing little acts of kindness for each other, and I really celebrated them. I had a big clear bucket at the front of the classroom, and every time someone showed kindness to another person, I would make a huge deal out of it, celebrate it, have that person come get a pom-pom, march up to the front of the room and drop it in the bucket, and then once they filled their classroom bucket, then they got a prize that they chose, and it really, it was heartwarming. So the last one is to make sure that when you are doing that emotion coaching, that you are infusing the idea of compassion in the conflict resolution step. And when they're evaluating and reflecting on their behavior, really inserting, well, how do you think that made the other person feel? Or when you yelled and we had to stop the lesson and we couldn't continue with the science lab, how do you think that made your classmates feel? Just constantly bringing that question in when there's any kind of conflict. All right. So habit number 4 is be grateful. And when you're grateful, you're thankful, you're appreciative of others, and you're ready to return kindness. So it really connects really well with compassion. So how do we cultivate gratitude? Again, being a model, very important. So saying thank you all the time when students do anything kind for you or each other, encouraging them, kind of making thank you a classroom rule or a school policy could be a good idea. Make sure that you're showing gratitude with parents whenever you get to interact with them. That's going to deepen their trust in you and encourage them to want to work together more closely with you. And verbally show gratitude with other teachers and administrators. Showing gratitude as a school leader and as a colleague is going to help other staff members want to work together to do things because everyone's going to feel more appreciated. Gratitude journals are a great way. Oh, Orinthia is showing hers. She has it right there. Gratitude journals are a great way to teach gratitude. So this can be a personal practice. I personally have a journal in which every single day I just jot down 3 things I'm grateful for about that day. And honestly, it doesn't take that long, but research has shown that simple practice can reduce anxiety and depression. So in a classroom, what this can look like is that if you have younger students, they might not be able to write anything, but they could draw a picture. You could also do like a chart paper where they come in as they walk in the door, they just jot down one thing they're grateful for. But I have had one of the parents that I worked closely with, she started a family gratitude journal after a workshop I did with her. And she said it was so successful that they took that gratitude journal and they turned it into a scrapbook where they started to include little mementos of the things that they were grateful for. Like if it was a movie, they put a little ticket stub in there. And then at the end of the year, it had quotes and pictures, and it was a great little memory for their year of gratitude. And you can easily translate that into the classroom and have a classroom gratitude memory book to give the students and the parents at the end of the school year. And they will just, that will help reinforce that idea of gratitude for years to come with them. If you want to do something a little quicker, that's not written, there's also gratitude routines. And it's a similar concept. You just verbally express the gratitude instead of writing it down. So this can really easily be done at morning meetings where maybe each student gets to say one word that describes what they're grateful for as you go around in a circle. Or maybe it's at the end of the day as students leave the classroom, they give you a high five and tell you what they were grateful for about that day. Another really great opportunity for expressing gratitude is special occasions. I love doing birthday gratitude, having the birthday student come up and have whichever students feel comfortable saying why they're grateful for that student being their classmate. So many opportunities to express gratitude, and kids, you will see this pick up like lightning with them. When I was a nanny, I really tried to cultivate this habit in all of the children that I watched. And as soon as I was more conscious of saying thank you to taxi drivers, restaurant staff, teachers, I immediately saw them saying the exact same words that were coming out of my mouth. So it's very powerful to be that verbal model for students. All right, our last habit is to reflect. And reflecting means taking the time to pause and think. And this might mean that you have to schedule this into your day. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, but really thinking how you can make some moments in your day. Reflecting is reviewing without judgment, which is going to be really difficult because human brains are actually hardwired to make very quick judgments for survival. But we have to remember that what might seem terrible to you could actually be really wonderful for someone else. So when you're practicing compassion really consistently, reflecting non-judgmentally is going to become really a lot easier, because then you'll be able to more easily see things from other people's perspectives. When you're reflecting, if it's something positive that you're reflecting on, you can also practice gratitude at that time. If it's something that was a little more challenging, this is a great time to brainstorm solutions and really think about how you can learn from that mistake. The most important time to reflect is after we lose our cool, because even if we're practicing all of these mindful habits all the time, there's still going to be times, maybe it's traffic for you, maybe it's spilling something on you. There are times when we lose our cool, and we have to take that moment, instead of having judgment for ourselves, to reflect. Give yourself a break, then identify the reason for your outburst, and then make sure that you're being compassionate not only to yourself, but also to the other people involved. Then you can identify how you could have reacted differently. All right, so how do we cultivate this habit? So the first one goes back to journaling, and journaling about difficult emotions can be very powerful. Perhaps you set up some kind of template back at the back of the classroom. Students know when they're having a rough day, they can just tell you, I need to take a moment to go sit at the back of the classroom and fill out this reflection sheet. Maybe you just have journaling as a regular practice in your classroom, and so students always know that you have a topic to journal about, but if they're having a rough day, they can say no thank you to that topic and journal about whatever emotions they need to process. I mentioned before that it's really important for you to make time in your schedule to reflect. So find those quiet moments in your day. Maybe it's when you're walking your dog. Maybe it's on your lunch break. Instead of picking up your phone to check all of your text messages, you spend 3 minutes before doing that to just kind of sit and think about the day that you've had and the day ahead and how you can live that day more mindfully. Also, insert those moments of reflection into your classroom as well. There's a lot of material to cover, but sometimes it's actually really good to give kids a couple of minutes to reflect on the material that you're teaching, and if it's difficult material, how it's making them feel. The next step is really simple. Just make sure that you don't skip that reflection step when you emotion coach. And for younger kids and for older kids, sometimes having a written template for emotion coaching is really great, because then they can have a written record of some of their struggles and the strategies you've talked about that can help them. Another thing I really like to do is called best worst part of the day. And this is another one of those things that can be written or verbal. I kind of, for my own personal practice, incorporated in my gratitude journal. After those 3 things I'm grateful for, I just write the best thing that happened today and the worst thing that happened today. And this can be tricky because you're trying not to be too judgmental, but you can still recognize that there are positives and negatives in your life. So with children, this can look the same way. Maybe it's a part of your gratitude journal, or maybe it's a verbal practice. Maybe it's just what you do when you have those quiet moments for them to reflect at the very end of the day. And you can even use this as an opportunity to have them think a little deeper about, like, so how can we make tomorrow better? And then the last one would be including reflections on classwork. So this is the, next slide, please, Orinthia. This is the idea that we don't want our grades to be final if it's going to cause anxiety in our students. And we know that testing practices cause a lot of anxiety in our students. So a better practice is to make sure that students know that whenever they get a test grade, they have a chance to reflect on their mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and then correct them. Not the exact same problems, but a similar problems. And in this way, students learn more deeply, they engage more with what they're learning, and then they cultivate a growth mindset, which is going to give them myriad benefits, including confidence to take on challenges. So this graphic is from a math teacher who, on her math test, she goes further on the reflection on mistakes and has them reflect on what kind of mistake they made. So that way, they can stop making those mistakes. If they see that they got 6 questions wrong, 4 of them are silly mistakes, they just need to slow down. And this can really help build study skills and general learning skills for children too.
Okay, Dana, today you've given us a wealth of ideas about what we can do to be more mindful. I want to go back to a couple of things you said recently. First, let's think about compassion. You know, it seems in some ways like this should be one of the easiest and most natural things to do, just to be kind. You know, it doesn't take a lot of energy, right? But we know that if kids have experienced trauma, that they may be very vulnerable, and it may be more difficult for them to be compassionate. And in fact, they may feel like they're losing power, or they're giving away part of themselves. And so they may be resistant to being compassionate. Do you have any hints for what to do with these students? I'm thinking maybe, again, middle-aged high school students, perhaps someone who's in a gang, someone who's used to posturing and doesn't want people to see the soft side.
Yeah, absolutely. So with students who are resistant, it's really important to take small steps and scaffold the learning, and starting really with self-compassion. And a really great technique of doing that is the loving kindness meditation, where they start with compassion, learning how to have compassion for themselves before they start extending it out to people they know, and then people they don't know, and then the whole world. And also, you're going to have to get creative and figure out what their interests are, and figure out what kind of things they're more comfortable with, or have a conversation with them. Practice that active listening. See if a written exercise might be better than meditation. A lot of students who've experienced trauma, closing their eyes down might be a little too intense for them. So doing a more active version of mindfulness, like yoga, doing one of those more fun breathwork activities. Really starting, you can start with the body and connecting how those body sensations are, and then kind of go backwards to the emotions.
I think those are all really, really good points. And I'm also thinking that for some students, it may be a matter of feeling safe and trusting those around them, so that if you have some patience yourself and don't expect that somebody's going to just jump on board immediately, but rather you set the environment up so that compassion is something that just happens more naturally over time in your classroom, that some of these students may be a little slower to kind of, get on the compassion bandwagon, but they may do it, particularly if they know that they're bonding with you, they're forming a relationship with you. And those things are so critical for for kids who are resistant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to recognize that you might not be the right person to teach them that. Maybe there's another trusted adult. For example, if you are a white woman and the student that you are teaching is a Black boy, you might want to look around the school and find a different person who they might feel a little bit more comfortable with. And also making sure that you set these expectations and norms for your entire class, or if you're an administrator, for your entire school, and you reinforce them consistently. Having posters up that have these practices or these concepts, having whole school assemblies that reinforce these concepts. Really trying to build a compassionate community by making sure that everyone knows this is a classroom where everyone is kind to each other.
I'm also thinking about your discussion of self-regulation or of self-reflection. And I wanted to relate that to self-regulation, because we know that sometimes the students who aren't really good at reflecting on what's happening may not be good at regulating their own emotions either. And they may be more impulsive. And so again, I would want to emphasize, this is something we need to teach. And sometimes it is a matter of verbal rehearsal or writing down some steps, having a metacognitive practice perhaps.
Yeah.
And I know in the classroom, when we look at academic assignments, rubrics can be very helpful.
Absolutely.
Because with rubrics, students can say ahead of time, you know what, I want to aim for that 90% mark. Perhaps I'm not going to go for the A this time, I want a B, and I'm going to do 3 out of 4 of the things you're suggesting. And then the student learns to say, hey, I'm making good progress. I think I did a pretty good job. The student learns, you know, I learn best when I have a chance to talk with my friends, or I learn best when I get on the computer and do some independent research and then have an opportunity to come back to the classroom. So helping students to learn about themselves, and again, over a period of time, I think can lead to better self-reflection. And again, it's not something that when you start on day 1, where you'll automatically get everyone saying, oh yeah, I know what to do. I can kind of write in my journal now and feel good about myself.
Absolutely. And that brings up a great point. A wonderful way to deepen your relationship with your students at the beginning of the year and get a little bit of insight into which strategies might work best is to do a really quick survey at the beginning of the school year, asking about your students' interests and what kind of ways they like to reflect, or you can ask if they prefer writing, if they like to move, try to get some of that information to inform your practices.
So I want to end with one general thought or question for you, Dana, and that has to do with students who are most at risk for mental illness, or those that have the most challenging behaviors and emotions, and thinking about our strategies today. And if you think about everything you've said and you want to give teachers like 1 or 2 takeaways for dealing with these students who we're so concerned about right now, what would you say to them?
I would say that cultivate these habits in yourself so that you really have enough room in your heart and in your mind to be present with those students and listen and try to see what the students are telling you, because almost always the students are going to tell you through their words or actions what they need. And a lot of the times those traumatized students, what they need is a single caring adult who's going to not look at them and see a problem, but look at them and see potential and understand that this student just hasn't gotten the right skills and tools. And that through some of these mindful practices, you can help that student slowly cultivate those skills and help regulate their emotions. And then, only then, are they going to have room to start the learning.
Thank you. So next slide.
Okay, so next, this one. So this is our last poll. So I asked you at the beginning of this presentation to choose one habit on to focus for the next 2 months. Sorry, that's a little mistake. I had originally heard that it was 21 days, and then when I went to look back at the study, it said that it was a common myth that a habit takes 21 days to form. It's actually 66 days. So 2-month challenge instead of 3-week challenge. So the first mindful habit that you're going to focus on, choose one, because like we said, this starts out small. You might think you want to tackle all 5, but just choose one and then move on to the next one. Which habit will you focus on? I have been trying to be more present because I started yoga teacher training, and I'm on 2 different projects, actually like 5 different projects. So I'm trying to be more present and just focused on one thing at a time. So I'm trying to cultivate that habit using some of my own advice.
We still have 3 people that did not respond just yet.
That's okay. They might be on their phones. It might be
okay. Did you want me to launch the results?
Yes. Okay. Oh, everybody's with me. Yes, it's one of the most difficult, especially when we have those magical computers in our pockets. So that's the key, I would say. There is putting that phone away is going to help you be a lot more present. I know my partner and I have a practice that when we walk through the door, we just put the phones down and we don't pick them up again until it's time to go to bed. So I would challenge all of you that are trying to be a little more present. Give that a try. See if your parents, see if that helps deepen your relationship with your children, and see what it does at school too. Thank you all so much for being a part of this webinar. I really enjoyed it. Now Olivia, if you can go to the next slide, we will open it up to questions from you.
If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, or you can actually just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
I had a comment. Very nice webinar, Christine and Dana. Thank you. I enjoyed it. With regard to standardized testing and the anxiety that often infiltrates students' minds, mindfulness has proven to be a very good technique in some of my schools in West Virginia. Body scans, releasing tension, and visualizing the test in their mind in a beautiful, scenic, nature-filled area. Test scores went up in one of my districts because teachers did a concerted effort on reducing anxiety through meditation prior to standardized testing. So it's hard to delineate whether it was personalized learning or more scaffolding or the meditation, but it's just another tool to be cognizant of.
Thank you, Sue. That's so important. Yes, meditation right before a test is an ideal time to do it. Also at the beginning of each lesson to just get your students more focused and calm and ready to learn. So yeah, thank you, Sue.
Did anyone else have any questions or comments? I took so many notes. This was amazing.
I have a comment, just saying that today I was able to use the being present strategies with, so I work in a camp, and there was an accident that happened at the camp, and 2 campers were taken away on an ambulance. And all of the kids at this camp are kids with high ACEs.
Oh.
So just seeing the ambulances really triggered them. But I had one child who was needing to just kind of process alone, and he kept saying, well, what would have happened if I could have been there to help them, or what's going to happen when they go to the hospital? They'll probably get sick and die. And I just kept bringing him back to, in this moment, right now, that camper is getting the help they need, and you're okay. It's a beautiful day outside. There's nothing dangerous. There's no lightning. Right now, we're okay. We just kind of kept bringing him back to right now and in the present. And it helped. He calmed down and was able to get on the bus to go home.
That's such a great point, and definitely like paying attention to all the different sensory things that are going around can be a really powerful tool to bring a child who is being triggered back into the present moment. Okay, but what do you smell? What do you see? What do you feel? That's a really great strategy. Thanks for sharing that, Lisa.
I did have a question. What I'm noticing in schools that are doing active shooter drills, it's almost triggering trauma, you know what I mean? And so I guess my question is, how can I, as a teacher, as an educator, utilize mindfulness during these, because it's a drill, but if the kids are just, you understand what I'm saying? Is anybody else experiencing this?
Yeah, my advice would be, to talk about the drill well before it's happening and really let the students know why you're doing this drill, that they are safe, and this is a very rare thing, but it's better to be prepared. And to also, after the drill has happened, great opportunity to do some breath work or some meditation to bring them back into that present moment. Also, it could be important to have a conversation about how that makes them feel. How did they feel when they were sitting there? Yeah. And that can lead to a conversation about, social justice and other things as well. And you can start to talk about, like, well, why do these drills happen? Maybe because some of the students who have done these things in the past didn't feel like they were part of a school community. And that's why it's so important for us to cultivate compassion and build that school community.
We've also had a question from Kate. And Kate asked, as a school leader, would you advise to focus school-wide on one approach, being present, compassionate, etc., or to allow staff to work with their and their students' choice?
Well, the wonderful thing about mindfulness is that it's so adaptable. And I personally would advise you to do what you think works best in your school. If you have a school that's already kind of a strong community and likes to do things together, maybe you pick one and do like one each month. If you know that your teachers really are self-motivated and driven and like to be creative with their own things, then maybe you present all the 5 habits and have each teacher or each grade level pick their own, because each strategy has its benefits. If each individual teacher or grade level is doing a different habit, then teachers and classrooms get to learn from each other. And if the whole school is doing one habit together, then you do build a stronger sense of community. So it's really up to you. Both work.
I would say too, if I think back to Kate and what we're doing with mindfulness practices in our approach, a lot of times we really believe that the mindfulness or the being present is most important. It's like the basis, it's the foundation. So that awareness of what's happening can help you figure out what to do next. And if you jump in and you think, okay, I'm just going to be compassionate this month, you might even miss the boat because you may not have people grounded in, oh, this is the reality, this is what's going on. So I would suggest look first to the basic, which I think is the active listening and being present.
Yeah.
The other strategy we've used in some schools is to think about teams, teams of teachers. So grade level teams, cross grade level teams, professional learning communities, and let the teachers work together so that in smaller clusters, they can support each other and also can support the interventions they'll use to help build the practices.
Absolutely. Now there are some times where we feel like we just can't get away from work as teachers, and that there's no way to put away the worries. And for that situation, I just challenge you that there's always a time to find a moment to be with yourself and be present, even if it's 2 minutes. Starting with 2 minutes a day is going to be a great place to start. So please, everyone, take that time. Take that 2 minutes today.
Excellent. I did have one more thing that I learned in another training about gratitude. The speaker said, you know how everyone gets these cards for Christmas with families in it? They said when you get them all, put them in a bowl, right? And for the entire year, pick one card out of the bowl and then have your children say why they are grateful for that family. So it's just another visual reminder for your kids to kind of relationship build and be grateful for other people and make them aware that they're not the center of the universe and that there are other families out there. And so you pull one out and you say, you know, I'm really thankful for this family because, and you keep them all year, and then you refill the bowl the following year. I thought that was a really great hands-on, because sometimes somebody put it in the chat about the smiley face, the emojis. Younger kids sometimes need those tactile things when you're talking about gratitude. Absolutely.
So I'm looking at the time, and as usual, we've run over by a few minutes. Can we look at the next slide, Arinthia?
Sure.
Okay. So again, some brief announcements to everyone. And after these announcements, then the fellows will stay on for a few more minutes. We should probably just be able to do our work very briefly today. So we are so excited to let you know that with our work with the CTLC in New England, we have now been funded for another year of service. Yay, which means that we can do additional work. We're going beyond the awareness level activities to trying to help get professional development to you and saying, now what can we do to help schools actually implement some of the practices like the mindfulness habits that we've talked about today. And soon, and it may be as soon as later tonight or tomorrow morning, we're going to come out with an announcement of these stipends for schools. The stipends are $500, $1,000, and $1,500, so it's not a lot of money, but it's enough where you might be able to get someone to come in to do a professional development. You might be able to buy some materials or resources, and or you might be able to come up with an innovative project. So we're going to have all the requirements listed out. We've got a deadline of like August 12th, so it's not much time, but we're going to turn this around quickly, and then we're going to have another round of stipends that will be announced later this fall. But, you know, keep your eyes open for that. Fellows, we also are going to be able to give you some feedback on how you've proceeded so far, and also then say, this is what we need to do so that we get the stipends to you in August for the work you've done to date. Upcoming webinars. Very excited that Yvette Jackson, one of my co-authors, who focuses on equity and justice, and also on self-determination and positivity in schools, will be speaking on August 15th. Note it's earlier in the day. And then later that month, Dr. Hillary Hodgson will join us again. She was present at our one-day meeting in Boston and has already given one webinar. The one in August will be on identifying trauma. And for that webinar, there will be a focus for school psychologists, but also others who want to know about some of the more formal instruments and procedures, as well as informal signs of trauma, and some of her recommendations about how we can be more effective then in working with students once we've done some of this identification. So I think I've hit the announcements. We want to thank you. Dana, I want to thank you again for your presentation, and want to remind you that you too can be mindful. Doesn't take a lot. It takes being present to begin with.
Yes, And don't forget about those handouts that are linked. And we do have one other quick little thing on the next slide. Keep going, those are the references. One more. Oh, where's the base camp one? Oh, here we go.
Okay.
So, fellows, we really want to build a compassionate community of each other too. And so the way that we have chosen to do this, since we're a virtual learning collaborative, is base camp. And all of you have set up your profiles. That's great. And you take a lot, some of you took that survey. If some more could take that survey about year 2 and give us a little more idea of what you want to see on Basecamp, that would be wonderful. But this is a great resource for you to go. We've got tons of little mental health experts in our interns to answer questions that you might have about mental health and childhood trauma. They have the time to go and do that resource that you don't have the time to do. You can also share resources that you have on specific topics and events that you're doing. I love seeing the different conferences that you all are presenting at. You can also share success stories in your school and district. And then you might have needs, like physical needs, that other people in your state could help you out with. Maybe you're doing some kind of community event and you could use a presenter, and one of your colleagues in the CTLC might have the skills to do that presentation. So we're really hoping that you all can engage in Basecamp pretty consistently to grow our sense of community and share resources. And coming soon, we're going to set up some different teams based on the concepts that you're interested in, like teen suicide and mindfulness practices. So we'll start some really curated conversations about those things. So hope to see you on Basecamp soon.
Okay. Dana, I want to remind people too that we set Basecamp up originally for the fellows. However, we've opened it up to participating schools. So there are some activities. So if your school has taken the SCATE and is part of our CTLC community, there will be activities available to you. If any of you feel like you'd like to join the CTLC, you haven't done it yet, or you want to join Basecamp, you can reach out to any of us, Ingrid, me, Dana, and we will respond to you. Okay. And so if you're not a fellow, I would invite you now to join us next time. And for the fellows, then if you'll just stay on for a minute or two more. Okay.
So I just wanted to end formally for our recording. Okay. So this concludes our webinar on cultivating mindful habits. So for more information, contact the Center for Educational Improvement. Stay posted to our website for links for the presentation, for the slides. And again, if you are a CTLC fellow, we would ask that you remain on the webinar platform for a brief meeting. So thank you all for coming. Fellows, please stay on the line. We're going to give it about 30 seconds and then we'll begin our meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.